We didn't talk about this a lot yesterday. Frankly, I don't find it to be that interesting of a topic. I know it's a big story, but I don't find it to be that interesting of a topic. The Redskins name change. Does anybody on the show, I'm just kind of curious about this, I'll go around the horn. Does anybody on the show feel strongly about the Redskins name, either pro or con? Danny G. Any oh my God, they've got to stay the Redskins, or oh my God, they've got to change the name? Do you feel strongly at all one way or the other?
Not at all.
Not at all. What about you, Dub?
I could care less.
Yeah. What about you, Eddie?
No, but I will say this. The high school I went to, the name of the school itself was named after their local Indian tribe.
Yep.
If they changed the name of that, which I don't know if that's being talked about, but it's California, so probably, I would be very upset about that.
What's the name of the high school?
Monache High School in Central California.
Is the Monache Indian tribe, is that what that is?
Yes, yes.
So and what was your mascot?
The Marauders.
The Marauders.
Yeah.
All right. So is that considered to be offensive right now? Is there a discussion in your town?
Well, the state of California said at one point, the state of California said
Let's
at one
just start
point.
here. The state of California is insane, and then unpack. Yes.
At one point, they said all high schools with Native American names will have to change their nickname. I know that there is a nearby town where I grew up that was the Redskins, and they've changed to the tribe. So it is going on, but there's some holdouts, I think, too.
Roberto, do you care about the Redskins?
No.
All right, so and I'm in the same boat as you. I don't care at all about the nickname. Here is the mascot, and I think there are a lot of interesting names. If I were in charge of this right now, I think the Red Tails is a really interesting idea. You guys know that I am a history buff, and so this was a World War II black fighter pilot group. I think the idea of you could maybe even keep the same R logo and go with Red Tails, that to me is a pretty interesting move, especially if you came up with a really awesome logo of like a World War II era. I know we have the Jets, so there's already a plane, so maybe that would be controversial in the NFL trademark universe. I'm not sure, but in some way incorporating that would, I think, be pretty cool. But here's where I am concerned in general about things like this is it doesn't end, right? If you told me right now, hey, Clay Travis, you and the perpetually offended woke community, you guys can sit down at a negotiating table. They can tell you all of the mascots that they are offended by, and you can reach a compromise, and we will never have to talk about changing mascots again for the rest of American history. Unless somebody just wants to change one because they like a new name or a new logo better, not because it's quote-unquote offensive, all right? So if we could reach an agreement, I would give you the Redskins and the Indians. If I give you those two, will you never complain about a mascot for the rest of all time? Can we make that trade? If we could, I would sign the papers, and I bet most sports fans would agree with me. And even if you're a Cleveland Indians or a Washington Redskins fan, you would get over it, and we would be done with ever having to talk about mascots again for the rest of mankind. But that's not the way these people work. The people who are perpetually outraged in this country, the social justice warrior community that is finding things to be offended by, they don't ever stop. They keep on coming after something else. So if you give them the Redskins and if you give them the Cleveland Indians, they're going to come to you and they're going to say, well, what about the Atlanta Braves? Or what about the Kansas City Chiefs? Well, what about the Florida State Seminoles? Well, what about just the Notre Dame Fighting Irish? Well, all of these things are continuing and they will never end. And you wonder why that is. Well, it's because that is what they owe their entire relevance to. If they were not upset, nobody would pay attention to these Redskins people who are offended by it. We have so created this universe where if somebody's offended by something, instead of standing up to it and saying, you know what, you're a loser, get over it, we placate the offended person which sets the precedent that the next thing is going to get changed. It's like these whole statue argument, right? People made fun of Donald Trump because he said, well, if you start with Robert E. Lee, eventually it's going to move to George Washington and to Thomas Jefferson. They owned slaves too. You're going to change the name of Washington, D.C. You're going to change the name of states. And people were like, Donald Trump's an idiot. He has no idea what's happening. And he's 100% right. New York Times editorial last week, I opened the newspaper. I was like, oh, my God. Why do I pay for these ignoramuses to deliver the newspaper to my house still every day? There's a guy on the editorial page saying we have to tear down the Jefferson Memorial. You guys, I went to college in Washington, D.C. I imagine a lot of you who are listening to me right now at some point in your life have been to Washington, D.C. and gone around and seen the monuments and the different memorials that exist in Washington, D.C. It's majestic, right? Whether it's the World War II Memorial, Vietnam, MLK, Lincoln, Washington, all of the different incredibly powerful monuments that exist in the Washington, D.C. Can you imagine if we went and tore down the Jefferson Memorial? I mean, it's utterly insane. It boggles my mind. That's where this goes, though. In order to be relevant, these people who are offended have to find something else to be offended by, even if the vast majority of people are not offended. And so if you told me, hey, Clay, you are in charge of negotiating with the woke losers, with all these people who are perpetually outraged by sports, if you give them the Redskins and the Cleveland Indians, we are done forever with having to pay attention to these people. I would sign the papers. I'd be happy to do it. I would move on. I don't have a particular affinity for either the Redskins or the Cleveland Indians. I'm also not opposed to it, right? They're mascots. It doesn't particularly strike me one way or the other. The problem is when you acquiesce to them and when you make the change, then you are allowing the next target. It's like next man up. Somebody gets injured, gets put on the disabled list. Redskins and Indians are gone. Next man up is the Braves. Oh, you can't do the tomahawk chop. Next man up is the Seminoles. Oh, my God, how dare you run out with Chief Osceola and throw down a flaming spear. Oh, my God, this is totally unacceptable, right? The Kansas City Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champs. You can't do the chant there, can't do the home of the Chiefs. All of that is unacceptable, too. It doesn't end. In order to remain relevant, they move on to the next target. And so that's my biggest concern, to the extent I have one, about the Washington Redskins name. I went to school in Washington. I've been to RFK Stadium. I think it's FedEx Field now, whatever it's called. I'm not particularly committed to that mascot. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I think, like many of you, that's probably my response in general. The Redskins name is symbolic of the precedent that we set when we allow something else to actually happen. And you're telling me, Dub, somebody is now saying, oh, the Texas Rangers name must go.
Yeah, this is from Karen Atia. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name.
I don't even know that we should give credit to the people who write these statements, because the reason why they're doing this is not because they really feel strongly about it. It's for the attention. So a Corona bro, I feel like we should just apply the term Corona bro for anyone out there who is a loser that is perpetually offended and not looking at facts. But okay, so the Corona bro is upset with the Texas Rangers name now?
Yeah, it's a Corona bro and literally a Karen. She's upset with the Texas Rangers team name because apparently atrocities against Indians, Mexicans, and black people that the historic Texas Rangers were responsible for during Texas's early history.
Texas Rangers still exist, though, right?
That's correct. The Texas Rangers are still, yes, around.
Texas Rangers are still a thing, right? I mean, they're basically a police force. Here's my thing with people who go back and look at history. Why do you judge someone based on their history as opposed to their current status? Right? So, like, the Texas Rangers still exist as a law force, right? They are undoubtedly, like anyone who is affiliated with any country in the history of the world. They have bad things in their past, but they now are much better, right? As a country, we have evolved and become better. So why do we define the country based on things that happened bad in the past as opposed to looking at the present now? I mean, a lot of the things that people are upset about in America, it's like they've never actually studied world history. They're like, well, America used to have slavery. Yeah, so did every country in the history of the world since humanity began. Slavery is a fact of life. The Romans were the most enlightened empire in their time. When they defeated you, they made you their slaves of all different colors. When tribes used to fight in ancient times, when you lost, your women and children became the property of the tribe that won if they left them alive, and the men that they didn't kill became slaves. Same with the women. That's the history of the world. The United States of America had slavery for less time as a country than the vast majority of countries that have existed in the world. The United States as a country had slavery from 1783 to 1863. That's 80 years. The United States allowed slavery to exist in this country for 80 years, 1783 to 1863. Okay? Any other issue that you have with American history of slavery is actually with the British Empire, because we were colonies before we became an independent nation that was able to make our own decisions. Okay? So if you are like the 1619 Project at the New York Times, your issue is not with America, it's with England, because England allowed slavery in the Americas as colonies from 1619 all the way up to 1776 when our war for independence began. You should want reparations from England for allowing slavery in the colonies, because they controlled the United States of America before we were the United States of America. I know that's a little bit of a history lesson there, but shouldn't be a surprise for you. Most of the Corona Bros do a poor job of understanding history. They constantly drag you back into something that happened in the 1800s. Dude, I was born in 1980, basically. I was born in 1979. I don't know why I'm responsible for anything that happened long before I was born. I don't know that I'm responsible for anything, frankly, that happened until like the year 2000, when I basically became an adult. Like, you shouldn't be responsible for things that occur before you're born or before you reach the age of majority. That's what we do in America. So this whole idea like, oh, Clay Travis, you're a white guy, it's 2020, you're responsible for what happened in 1820. Why? Why am I remotely responsible for that? Why would any white person, many of whom had absolutely no ancestors even in the United States in 1820 or 1840, why would they be responsible for what happened there? Like, you're not going to hold me responsible for what happened in Germany in 1642. My family, by the way, if you do the lineage, mostly from England. All right. Am I responsible for what happened in 1540 in England? I don't even know what happened in 1540 in England. We got to get back to, you are responsible for yourself and the decisions you make. And by the way, if we did that, which is the very essence of sports, by the way, every person is responsible for what they do on a field or court. You are responsible for you during the course of the game, for no one else. If we did that, the country would be in a lot better place.